Hello and welcome everyone to our last session of the day. Shawn, you can go ahead and unmute and turn on your camera whenever you're ready. We're joined by Shawn Tew talking about the rabbit hole of the 1909 Lincoln wheat cent. He has been collecting for over 4 decades and spent the past 2 decades appraising, and then more recently got into numismatic forensics in 2022. So we are ready for a deep dive into a coin that I'm sure most of us are at least slightly familiar with. So for everyone watching, just a reminder, I'm sure you know the drill by now. We will be doing a Q&A at the end. You can send in questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window. We'll read them off at the end, and all of them will be read anonymously. So if you're concerned about your name being shared, it will not be. And I think that's all for me. Shawn, I will let you take it away.
Okay, so I'm going to shut off my camera here.
If you don't mind leaving your camera on, we do prefer it. It helps keep people engaged just to be able to see you talking.
All right. Let's see what we can do here. Good evening, everybody. I am the author of The Rabbit Hole of the 1909 Lincoln Wheat Cent and The Rabbit Hole of the Improper Alloy Mixes. I am going to go over the 1909 Lincoln Wheat Cent, the research that was done this year starting in January. Forgive me, I've just put this on a new laptop, so I'm trying to make it through everything here. The agenda we're going to have today is from the beginning of when we started researching. We'll cover these bullet points right here of entering the rabbit hole, the winds of change, the mystery of the 2 reverses of the 1909, the 4 master hubs, and a closer look at the 2 galvanos. We did some research at MSU through 3D, and then we'll cover the class 3 DDRs. And the final bullet point will be the 1910 reverse of 1909 discovered earlier this year. First, we're going to hit the rabbit hole. And come on, there we go. All right, so this is the introduction. For over a century, the transition of the 1909 United States minor coinage has been studied and written about. All written publications base their writing on documents stored at one of the National Archive locations. Theories and speculations have come and gone, some proven, some not, but in the end, they are all about the same information. The ideas contained in this publication started as theories, but then were explored with science and facts. A few individuals helped with this exploration that led to the information presented in these pages. Many publications provide a summary of the story that unfolded in 1909 between the mint, the sculptors, the public opinion. The intent of this book is to explore the anomalies that are not normally, if ever, explored. Welcome to our rabbit hole. So we start off by the beginning of St. Gaudens in 1908, commissioned to create the 1 cent. This up there. We know that Gaudens passes away. We get an email, or not an email, a letter from Frank Leach sending to the Treasury Department, voicing his dislike for Brenner's design. As you can see there on the right of your screen, these are a couple of his submissions to the U.S. Treasury on his 1 cent ideas. One of the top is actually, you can see by how he draws out the E's and the T's on both drawings, that when you look at the reverse on the 1909, you can see his transition from his drawings to his sculpting. His artistic style is unique. It has a thicker bar on the right side of the T than on the left. His E's have a curvature on the inside of each one of the letters. They're not crisp like what Brenner is used to, or that Barber is used to. Brenner's kind of a little bit more sloppy in his work because he's used to a larger platform like metals versus a smaller application like the scent. So in this letter dated February 13th, 1909, you can see that Barber is not too thrilled with the field and the plane that's on the back. It doesn't have the field or the finish that Barber is used to. So he gets the plaster casts and he starts to make some physical changes that Barber needs in order to get manufacturing done. So, hold on, let me catch up here in my book. Sorry for the dead space. So we see letters between Barber and Brenner. Brenner has a certain distaste for him. With the lack of knowledge of the minting process against him, Brenner continues to submit ideas and models that just will not work for Barber's satisfaction. This is apparent in a letter dated February 13th, 1909, in which he goes over, your letter of the 10th received and the contents have been discussed with the director, who I understand has given you certain instructions on regarding his design. This refers to the radius that Brenner has submitted. It's a shallower radius. It caused many issues as far as the manufacturing goes in the presses. He continues on, I find your Lincoln metal that the field of the front of the face is one plane and the field of the back of the head is an entirely different plane. This creates an issue with the metal flow. And from our research, you can see this evident as far as die cracks go, normally in about the same place around the wheat to the edge of the rim. In another letter in February of 18th of 1909, he's requested another change in the design. The V that was being used instead of the U in every instance of his models, and the models that are shipped back for change. He doesn't want the V in there. He wants that replaced with the U. So we'll go into the silent winds of change. The green light to start production was June 3rd. The first mention to the public that production has started with the new Lincoln scent does not appear until June 11th in a local newspaper. The Cumberland Evening Times, the Coiner ledger from the Philadelphia Mint shows that first entry for receipt is June 30th, 1909, with 20 million of the new Lincoln designs. It was not until July 15th, 1909, that an official White House approval was announced by Secretary McVeigh. Our study of coins that we used is owned by, sorry, I'm having an issue here. With Blaine Newport, and he owns a hoard called the Bloom Hoard. We covered this a little bit farther in depth in chapter 12, and it was a group of coins. There's 332 of them, and they were purchased by Mr. Bloom and put in a safety deposit box in 1909, and they stayed there until Blaine purchased them. It was through that group of coins that we were able to distinguish two different reverses, and that they were all done before the release to the public in August. So here we're going to see the claims that were made between Barber and Brenner's design. The one on the left is Barber's design. It's a little thicker. It was having problems going through some of the machines, and Barber made the change on the reverse, and the stacks that are on the right are going to be the second design, which has a clear N and a lower E, and the ones on the left have a thicker filled in N, and the E of America is level. So we're going to show what I'm talking about here. Hold on. There we go. It skipped one. Sorry about that. So up here you can see the filled in N of the type 1 reverse. And right here, this E is level with the M and the R. Brenner comes through and he cleans up not only the inside of the curvature of the E's, he makes them crisper and clearer, cleans up the N, and now the E is lowered. So you have both reverses. They're not, the galvanos are not recorded, because just like any other tool and die shop, you do what you have to do in order to get the production to run correctly. He also changes the style of the initials. Now, up here in this type 1, you'll see the style of the B is that of Brenner. He gives a really kind of slant to the top of the B. The change that Barber ends up taking, you can see the dot between the initials has been moved. The curvature of the B matches the same B that you find on Barber quarters and anything else that Barber has done with his initials on it. Here again, you'll see the type 1 is beveled and rounded both underneath the arch here. This is Brenner's style. Barber's style is square and more sharp and concise. So here's the 4 master hubs. Is you end up with the initials on both of these, one of Brenner's, one of Barber's, and then without the initials, you have one of Brenner's and one of Barber's. So we'll read through this screen real quick. On or around March of 1909, the numismatist announced the coming arrival of Brenner's new Lincoln design. The first reverse galvano was created with issues in production. Slight changes were made to the master die in order to fix them. This permission is granted by Brenner to Barber in a letter dated March 27, 1909. He goes on, he doesn't need to have the galvanos or the corrections sent back to him. Go ahead and retouch the reverse. There's only a few things that need to be changed, and please suit yourself about that. For an unconfirmed reason, a second galvano was created. And the reason I say a second one is because you'll see that there's no design way of adding material into a die. The A's here from Barber are much larger opening, but when you come down to Brenner's openings are a lot larger. When you come down to Barber's openings, they're filled in and smaller. Same with the R, both the A's. The E is moved down. You can see how it's even here at the top, but here it's lower. So this E has been slid down just a hair. Now, back in 1909, you're not going to see this underneath a microscope or underneath a magnifying glass. It's close enough to get by. It wasn't until years later, decades later, that we start to see these notices or take notice of the difference between the two of them. So, August 5th comes around, and we all know about the removal of the initials. So the cost effective of going back from the start versus trying to remove them, they decided to go ahead and remove them off the dies that they currently have. But they've been done in such a way that there's no trace noticeable or abrasions or gouges from over polishing. So this letter here I found down at the archives when I went to in Washington, and this we can kind of consider as a smoking gun. If you go through it, Barber is writing to Secretary McVeigh, and he actually goes through here and says that he's done what needs to be done in order to make the reverse work. He's made some adjustments, and if you guys want to take a moment, I can read it, and we'll go through it there. Mr. Barber, the coiner of the Philadelphia Mint, is here, and I should be glad to have you meet him before he returns to Philadelphia, if possible. The first issue of the Lincoln coin was exactly similar to the present issue, of the exception that the Lincoln head was placed near the top of the coin and more of the bust is showing, and there was no motto, "In God We Trust." In the second and final edition, the only change was that the head was brought nearer to the center of the coin, part of the shoulders were cut off, and the motto "In God We Trust" was set above. On the reverse side, there has been no change. There has been no change. The VDB initials were in the samples which we showed you in the President. Mr. Barber states the making of a coinage die is as follows. A mother die is cut intaglio. From the mother die is made the hub, which is a steel relief exactly the same as the coin. From this hub, the coinage dies are produced by being driven into blocks of cold steel. The letter B could be engraved on the mother die easily, but the letter VDB cannot be erased from the mother die because it is intaglio. To make a new mother die, it is inconspicuous with an inconspicuous B, and without the VDB would take at least 14 days. This delay can be avoided by simply erasing the VDB from the hub and having no B whatever on the coin. From this amended hub, the coinage dies can be rapidly and promptly struck off within 3 days, and the mint can continue the coinage of the pennies, for which there is a great demand. Mr. Barber favors cutting off the initials and leaving them off the coin entirely. This is not unusual, as there are no initials on the 5-cent piece, and formerly there are no initials on the eagle, half eagle, or quarter eagle. On the other hand, it is not unusual to have an initial shown on a coin. St. Gaudens's initial appeared on the gold pieces, Pratt's on the half eagle and quarter eagle. There are 2 reasons why Mr. Barber favors erasing the initials from the new penny. First, because it involves a delay of only 3 days in coinage operations instead of the delay of about 14 days. Second, because if the B is placed in an inconspicuous place, he fears that he may be confused with the B that now appears on the $half, which was engraved by himself. He continues on and says that he does whatever he needs to do in order to get these to work and to get production back on production out to the public. So when we look at a closer look at the 2 Gabanos, I went to the MSU Advanced Microscopy Lab here at Michigan State University in Lansing, and I had images made to where I can measure in nanometers. And what we're doing here is we're going to compare the E of America from Brenner's reverse to Barber's reverse. So you can see here in Brenner's reverse, you're at 1379 nanometers from top to bottom. That is close to the 1415 of Barber's version. So you can see that no metal was removed from one die to the next. Both the M and the R are at the same pitch and height. It's just this E has been moved slightly down to the south. This also happens to be the second reverse, the Barber reverse happens to be the one that continues on through from 1910 to 1958. In the past, I've seen where it was noted that some of the second reverses on 1909 were referred to 1909 reverse of 1910. We have shown that both reverses were 1909, and the first one of Brenner should never have moved on past 1910. They just continued to use the one that Barber modified. I hope I said that right. We also did a letter analysis on each one of the letters through MSU. Once again, you can see Brenner's reverse. The R's are different. The A's go from a wide opening to Barber's smaller opening over here. The angles are more of a 90-degree or sharp angle. Same with the rounded edges. So you can't add metal to a die. You would only be able to take it away from the die. Here we're going to explore the reverses in 3D. So I went back to MSU. I had 3D images created using a Shawn Tew high-powered light microscope. So we went through and we did a crosshatch right across the middle circumference of the circle. You can see between the type 1 reverse from the base to the rims, the difference between Brenner's reverse, where you see low profile letters. Now this cuts right through the bottom of the C, E, N, and T. So this is the C, E, the N, and the T right here. And then you go to Barber's reverse, and now it's a shallower bowl and higher relief. This thus not putting so much wear and tear on a die when it strikes the blank. Here we'll even go into larger detail. The center being 1314, and this center being 1326. But you can see the curvature, and the edge rims are shorter in Barber's reverse than they are in Brenner's reverse. And that goes back to the stacks of pennies. When you stack 20 pennies of Brenner's reverse, they're much higher than Barber's reverse. So go on to this one. So now you're going to see the class 2 or class 3 DDRs. This is where it started getting interesting. I know I've read a lot of information out there over the last 20, 30 years. Everything from lathe skipping on the reverse to create this to engraver touch-up. What you're going to see here is this being Brenner's reverse here of this is the ITE of United. You can see where Brenner has this curvature of his E's similar to his hand drawn pictures when he first submitted it. The T on the inside curves in, and then you come down here to Barber's reverse, and everything becomes nice and sharp angles. He's a little bit shorter on the top. So we did some measurements and you can see that the top of this T is 726 nanometers. This one is 843 nanometers. So we took a overlay, Blaine did, of both reverses, overlaid them on top of each other, and we end up with the class 3 DDR over here on the right hand side. You see the measurements exactly measure 726, and that is of Barber's reverse, and then the 855 is that of Brenner's reverse. They're hubbed on top of each other, creating your class 2 or your class 3 DDR. Now, in theory, you're gonna see, when you follow this, is these class 3s ended up being created because the cost effectiveness of creating 1,716 dies for 1909, and then Barber stepping in, figuring out how higher relief, a lower bowl, a better way to speed up production than to take his version and hub it over top of Brenner's version to save dies. This is where the class 3 ends up coming in. You can see the filled in N with a sharp N over top of it, the two T's on top of each other, Brenner's style of a curvature on the E with Barber's E on top of that. And so it's determined that during the hubbing of a working die, the working hub from the second galvano was hubbed on top of the working die from the first galvano. And the first galvano is only used, or the first reverse is only used in 1909. This reverse is what we ended up calling the transitional reverse. It transitioned from type 1 into type 2. They tried to save some of the type 1 reverses by hubbing the type 2 on top of it. It can't, we use that as our reference point as transitional reverse. It may not take on as far as the community goes, but that was our way of identifying the two of them. Here you can see in states the same thing. You're going to see Barber's T on top of Brenner's T, along with this S. The M is doubled, and the F. So that leads us into the discovery of the 1910 obverse with the 1909 class 3 double die reverse on it. This was discovered back, I believe, in March. I was researching on my other book and looking for some more samples of a 1910. Came across this one and noticed that it had the first reverse on the back. Now I know even Dr. Sol Taylor, a couple of decades ago, was looking for a 1909 VDB or Ghost VDB on the back of a 1910. I don't think everybody was looking for the actual letters. Everybody was studying or looking for the initials down at the bottom, being that this filled in N does not continue past 1910, but the clean N of Barber does. It was kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. So when you blow it up, it actually has the class 3 reverse on it as well. This is the Discovery coin and its reverse. It shows both Barber and Brenner's T's, E's, the N, the T in states. It also has die cracks on the back as far as identifying a sample of the 1910 with a 1909 reverse on it. So once I brought this to the group, we started looking for more samples. Jay Painter of Ionia, Michigan found a second one. And then we kind of put it out on social media, looking for more samples. As to date, 10 have been found 9 have been certified through NGC, which that was interesting turn of events. I sent this to Dr. Wiles. Dr. Wiles got it listed on his Variety Vista page. I emailed Miles Standish that day when I found out that it was certified and listed. He helped me contact NGC. NGC responded within the next morning to be the grader for this coin. Sent the coin in overnight express, and it has a discovery label on it as the 1910 reverse of 1909, and is now on their variety page. Here's the last panel. Copies of either one of the books can be found on Amazon, and you can follow me on social media on Facebook down there at the bottom. Be emailed anytime at that email address. And I think I'm back to Leanna for Q&A.
All righty. Then you can go ahead and stop the screen share. There's a red button up at the top that should say stop share.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Okay. So we have a couple questions already in the Q&A. For everyone else, go ahead and send those in and we will work our way down the list. To start off with, why do type 1 no VDB coins exist? If they fixed that problem before the initials were removed, why did the hub stick around?
I think a lot of it's got to do with the cost effectiveness. They had to go and get back right onto production. It's really hard when you're looking at those dies to tell which one's type 1 and which one's type 2 without putting it under at least a 20x loop. So once you start looking at the ends, you figure they had to come back into production and as soon as possible because the demand was there. I think it was more of, instead of wasting materials, they used what they had to until those dies expired. Through calculations, the die lifespan for 1909 is 59,000 hits. You go into 1910 and they only made 700, 1,000 less dies in 1910. And those lasted almost 250,000 hits per die.
Okay. What recommendations do you have for someone who wants to get started in this kind of numismatic research?
A lot of reading. So a good friend, Roger Burdett, he has written many books on the history of U.S. coins. Ken Potter's got really good books that he's put out for errors and finding stuff in everyday change. There's always the Red Book. Plenty of sites out there, Variety Vista, for errors and varieties. Social media, lots of pages. It's a learning curve. I mean, I've been doing this for over 40 years now, and just this year I've jumped into this. I do want to say once we started finding the DDRs, as of today, we have 31 listed. There's 8 with VDBs, 19 with plain, 1 proof, and 3 from the San Francisco Mint. Most of them are done with a select few. Kathy Hoffman is now joined us in her with 8 DDRs to her name. Blaine's got probably the most out of everybody. And I do want to say that, Brian Wagner, Charmy, if you're out there, these guys discovered a lot of these coins back in 2010. These have been written before. It's not new as far as the DDR. I think what is new is discovering why. And I don't think anybody ever thought that there were so many different versions, showing that this just wasn't a mistake. This was intentionally done, because you can't just mistake 31 different DDR variations.
Are there any proofs known?
The 1909 proof is known. It is listed as DDR 020 on Variety Vista. Copper Coins has it on their site as well. And it is listed as a class 3. but there's still information out there as far as identifying these as lathe skipping. A lot of this information is I guess outdated now that we have research and scientific proof.
All right. So this next one is currently the last one in the Q&A. So if anyone else has questions, get those in promptly. For now, why is Variety Vista the only place you can find these listed?
Right now we're working with Konica. They are in redesigning their website, so they'll be listed on Konica as well. Unfortunately, there's always two sides, two camps as far as who wants to attribute and who doesn't want to attribute. I know Annex recognizes everything that Dr. Wiles has done. I have sent this information to Wexler, and along with Ken Potter has it. So the information is slowly getting out there. It's just it's taken a lot of knocking on doors to have people actually see and read this information, and it's changed a lot of minds.
For sure. Okay, we don't have anything else in the Q&A, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up, and if anything else pops in, we'll backtrack and cover it.
Okay.
But for now, thank you so much for taking the time out to present. It's always great to have these more scientific ones thrown in here with some more general interest topics. So very interesting rabbit hole. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for all of the viewers, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. We are starting later tomorrow than we did today. And we'll be kicking things off with the feature video for the symposium, which is talking about pieces in the ANA Museum and their collection. So I hope you'll join us for that. And I think that's it. That's all I've got. Thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Shawn, and we'll be back tomorrow morning.
All right, thanks.